I really like what you said, HD, about the legend, right? And the mysticism behind some of these things. And I think sometimes when I hear people talk about these conversations, it feels like it's being applied in the wrong places, right? I think one of the things that you mentioned is one of those like legends, mysticisms that only Black people are the ones that don't get along. I am kind of a nerd, so sometimes especially with the Brexit stuff, I'd watch the British Parliament talk to each other. I watch the Irish Parliament talk to each other. They are absolute savages to each other, cussing and all, cussing and all. Asian people have wiped each other out and claimed each other's territory and colonized each other from the beginning of time. The issue is that ours gets publicized while they work to keep theirs quiet. And that's not in and of itself is the leverage and propaganda. It started in Africa. There's all these resources, and how do we get to these resources? We're going to cause a lot of chaos here and get them to hate each other and play favoritism to the people who look more like us because that's more digestible. And if we can get them to believe it, they'll teach it to their children. So we don't even have to put in all the work every generation. We just got to do it with one, maybe two generations, and then they'll do it to themselves, right? And what makes like the internet such a remarkable tool is just take a camera, put it out there. We'll add a like feature so that you get dopamine hits every time you reinforce the things that we teach you about. And then we'll write these algorithms that even if you're not looking for this stuff, it'll seep in and you'll start to interact with it. And the next thing you know, the shade room has more followers than the best of politicians, right? When we talk about how other communities don't get along and how our stuff is so out there and it's so sensationalized, like ask questions about why, right? I think when you dig into it, it's really interesting.
I seen I seen a documentary on warfare of the future, and they said that like human soldiers are no longer what people are investing in technology and resources and or the time and money into making better human soldiers. And they said that the majority of the money would be going into understanding how to create narratives and run cyber op programs and things to create narratives and take, so you can cause a coup in a country specifically by turning the people against that leader. So you have to have wars of propaganda and proxy wars, and a lot of research is being put into that. And that's how they said the wars of the future will be fought. It wouldn't be fought for land masses. It will be fought for the prioritization of ideals. So whatever your ideals is, I'm sorry.
You know, and it's so crazy to me because, you know, some of the smartest people are brown people, you know, and we're not talking necessarily in this country, just, you know, in the world. And even they fall victim to, you know, thinking the lighter you are, the better, or the, you know what I'm saying? And even I think it was somebody in the comment who stated, if I had a choice and I woke up tomorrow, I mean, basically, and that's me too. If God said you can wake up tomorrow and be any color you want to be, I'm gonna choose black. I love being a black woman. You feel me? But for whatever reason, we allow everything looks better on somebody else instead of us. And it's so funny because I just looked at the Lapeef chat, right? And it was a white woman who had hips. And so they praise her because she's a white woman with hips. You know what I'm saying? But why can't it's almost like anything, even if it's an imitation, it's like it's better on them, even if it's not even a real thing. It's just better, you know. And that just bothers me that we think that way about each other. It's just sickening, almost, so to speak. Does that make sense?
I think that's what conditioning does, though. In general, not just you're speaking from a colonization aspect, but stuff like that occurs in day-to-day relationships, like among families, among boyfriend, girlfriend, where the that if you don't have a knowledge of self, you allow somebody else to define who you are. And so because we lack, and I don't just mean Black people, but I think Black people have it harder just on a strength that all of the things that would help you identify who you are, setting that foundation, has literally been stripped away from us and replaced with something different, which makes it very confusing to have a groundwork of identifying that part of you that makes you you. You know what I'm saying? So that I just feel that we deal with something totally different because we can't identify like our background. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that matters, like having a
But
culture.
it's not just, but what I'm saying to you, it's not just Americans, it's Indians, it's all other cultures, it's other nations of people who are under the same type of, it's not, I'm not just talking about African American, I'm talking about
They ran the game. They ran that game everywhere.
Right,
They
that's what
ran
I'm
the game.
saying. That's the colonization
Portuguese to the
aspect
French.
of it. Absolutely. But what I'm saying is Black Americans, we deal with it a little differently because historically our story is different. Because one of the things that, at least in the other cultures, they still have that. They still have their culture. You know what I'm saying? So there is some level of identity that's associated, even if they choose to be like, I want to look more white or whatever, they still have that cultural aspect of who they are intact. Whereas African Americans are different because we don't. Like, I remember seeing something somewhere is that there's a lot of confusion because we don't know where we belong, right? So it's kind of like we could say we're African American because we have, you know, DNA of from Africa, but there is no ancestral ties like where we understand the culture or know the culture or know which tribe we're actually from to really kind of understand certain things. And then here it was like we had no culture. We were given a culture and had to replace the things that made us us. And now I think we just have a hodgepodge of Black, you know, Americans that's still just trying to figure it out. And I think that's why we're so lost, and it make us susceptible to being easily influenced.
But I do want to emphasize, when I'm asking the conversation, I'm saying globally, like what type of mind control when you have not only just this country, multiple countries, you know, smart people, you know, multiple falling under the, you know, you understand what I'm saying? That's wow. You know, and sometimes I think, well, if we go back in history and we look at things like the Holocaust and we look at slavery, and sometimes you put in fear in people like, oh my God, I don't want that to happen to my people. Let me just chill and just be cooperative, or, you know, so maybe that has a lot to do with it. Who knows? But it's just, it's crazy to me. And then if you go to what Mistaken was saying, because I do want to hit on that because we still do it today. Because here we are, individuals who know better, but yet we still listen to music that calls us bitches and hoes. We listen to it. We still bump to it. And we know better. So we still feed into that ourselves. So it's just like, I don't get it. At least y'all do, because I don't listen to it. But and I will say that in the 90s, I think that Black people love being Black in the 90s. Let me tell you, that was a Black decade. You talking about, and people want a little, you remember how they used to have the little African, y'all remember that? The little African, and it was just like, you were proud to be, and there was nothing better than being Black. I'm Black and I'm proud. What happened to I'm Black and I'm proud?